As Hashem, today's daf is Masechta Kiddushin Daf Mem Daled, and we'll begin from Daf Mem Gimel Amid Beis about by the two dots.
Mhm.
So the Mishnah said that a man has the right, a father has the right to accept Kiddushin on behalf of his teenage daughter. Basically, teenage daughter, I mean a Nara, which is a 12-year-old girl. A 12-year-old girl up until she's 12 and a half, that's called like a Nara. So that's what the Mishnah says. So the Mishnah, Tanan Hasan, we learned in the Mishnah, Nara, a 12-year-old girl. Okay, here's Lewis. Hi, Lewis, we just began. Okay, Mem Gimel Amid Beis by the Tanan Hasan. Tanan Hasan, we learned over there, Nara, a 12-year-old girl. Hamu Oirasa, she got engaged, okay? Now, Murasa means she got engaged, but did not go to chuppah, right? So she didn't complete the move from her father's jurisdiction to the husband's jurisdiction. She's halfway there. Now, let's say this guy decides to give her a divorce. So the Tanakama says, Hiva via Makabala Skita. It's her and her father could accept the get, right? It's her and her father. That's it, because once it's coming to a get, of course, the father accepts the Kiddushin, but now we have an extra thing that she can accept the get without telling her father. Rabbi Yehuda says, but she's a teenager, right? She's a 12-year-old girl. There can't be two bosses over one body. Can't be two people who have the rights to one body. Ella, since the Torah says the father has the rights to his 12-year-old girl, only the father could accept the get, and not the girl herself. Then the Mishnah says, if she's mentally not capable of guarding her get. In other words, she's imbecilic, and that when you give her a get, she doesn't move out of the house. She keeps coming back to her husband's house. So she's like a shoita, then even no matter what, even if you give it to the father, you can't give her a get because she's a shoita, and a shoita you can't give a get. Amr Shlakish. Now we're going to go into machlokes. Kamachlokes legerushin. Just like there's a machlokes between Tanakama and Rabbi Yehuda regarding divorces, kach machlokes lekedushin. So also the same argument would be by kedushin, whereby the Tanakama would hold that a 12-year-old girl can accept Kiddushin without telling her father, even though the father has a right to decide who she's getting married to. But if she does it on her own, the Tanakama would hold that it's valid. Rabbi Yochanan says no, machlokes v'gerushin. Only by divorces we give her the right to accept the gerushin, according to the Rabbanan, the Tanakama. Aval the Kiddushin, when it comes to getting married, accepting engagement, divrei hakol, even the Rabbanan will say avia v'lohi. It's only the father that has that right, and not her. She can't decide without the father who she's going to marry. Rabbi Yosef bar Chanina said, "My time with the Rabbi Yochanan, I'll leave with the Rabbanim." What is the reason of Rabbi Yochanan according to Rabbanim? One could say that it's just like by gerushin, it's the girl could do it herself. Why not by kedushin? Answers the Gemara, gerushin the machaneses atzma l'shus avia bein hi bein avia. But gerushin, the whole idea is that she's coming back into the father's jurisdiction by her accepting a divorce. Basically, she's getting reverted back to her father's domain, complete 100% control. So the father does not mind if she accepts the get on his behalf, so to speak. The Kiddushin, deciding who she's marrying, that's the step away from the father. The mafkaz she's removing herself from the jurisdiction of her father. So that decision is avia. Only the father can make that decision, and not this 12-year-old girl. That's the reason of Rabbi Yochanan. Says the Gemara, V'harei mamar. We know that there's a type of mini Kiddushin called mamar. Let's review. When a brother dies, the Yavam has to do Yibam on the Yavama. Now, Chazal said, really, the Torah says, just have Bia, and that's it. They're intercourse, and you're done with it. Chazal said, no, in order for it to, we want to make it more traditional, so we require the Yavam to give Kiddushin to the Yavama. That's a Kiddushin d'Rabbanan. Okay? So that's called Maimer. So it's a Kiddushin d'Rabbanan that is only uniquely applied by Yavam situation. The Mafkas Atzm Rishus. And Naira at that time is going out of the jurisdiction of her father. Utnau, we learned in the Mishnah. We go to the top of Memdal and Amanav. Kitana min Erisin. If she's a Kitana from Erisin, let's say she got married as a young girl, let's say she's 7 years old, and she only had Erisin. So the father gave her over into Erisin to this guy, and then the guy died. Now she's falling to, as a Yavama, she's falling to the brother. Ain't Oisim by Mama Elamadasaviya. Only the father could decide to accept Kiddushin, or which is a type of the first part of Yavam, of the Yibam process, only if you let the father know let the father know, and he has to be aware which brother is going to miyabim her. Bahanara, but if she was a 12-year-old girl when this happened, that means her husband died. She only had Erisin, so she's now Muresus. Now she's falling to Yibam. And now she's getting a mimer, bein midas atzma, whether she can decide to accept it without notifying the father, bein midas avia, or the father could accept it. So we see from here that when it's a mini kedushin, and we see that she has the right to accept the kedushin from the yavam. So isn't this a question against Rabbi Yochanan, who said no, only the father has the right to kedushin and not the girl? So the Gemara changes it and explains the reason of Rabbi Yochanan. If this you want to explain what the reason of Rabbi Yochanan is, this is the reason. And with this reason, you're going to understand that Maimer is different. Rabbi Yosi Bar Chanina. My time with Rabbi Yochanan, Alibi Rabbanim. What's the reason of Rabbi Yochanan? According to Rabbanim, Kiddushin, a regular normal Kiddushin, the medata that she needs to sell herself. Right when you're doing a Kiddushin, you're selling the girl to the husband, right? So then Avia V'lahi, then it's the father to decide to sell his 12-year-old girl, and it's not up to her. Gerishin, a divorce, the Bal Korcha, it comes against her will. When she's already an Amar Rasa and the husband decides to give her a get, it's against her will. She can't decide, no, I'm not going to get divorced. So therefore, the husband can give the get to the father even against her will, his will too, because it's not up to the father. So therefore, in that case, when she's getting a divorce, bein he, bein avia, whether it's her or her father could accept the divorce. Says the Gemara, but wait a second. If you're saying that it's dependent on whether it can be done against his will or not, Hare Maimar, getting a Maimar, Yavam giving Kedushin to the Yavama, the Midaita, that she has to agree with it. Uktani bein he vein avia. And we learned before that it's her or her father. Maimer is like a mini Kedushin, and we see that she could accept it on her behalf. And says the Gemara, not so fast. Hossam but Maimer the Baal Korcha. Maimer can be done against her will. Wow. A Yavama falls to Yibam. This Nara, this 12-year-old girl now is falling to Yibam. So then the husband, the future Yavam, the future brother, can give her Kedushin against her will. And who holds like that? Rebbe. The Tanya we learned in the Brisa. If you didn't even ask her consent, you give Maimer to a Yavama against her consent, Rebbe Abikana, it works. Chacham says it doesn't work. My time with the Rebbe, why should the Rebbe hold that if it's against her will, it would work? Gama bebiya di Yavama. We learn it from this Maimer should be similar, that if you did Bia to Yavama, it goes against her will. Ma bi bid Yavama. The Torah says that when a Yavama falls to Yibam, you don't have to ask questions to Yavama if she agrees. The brother can force his Bia onto her. So the Yavama, Ma bi the Yavama, the Bal Karcha, it's against her will. Av Hochanami Bal Karcha, so also Maimer could be done against her will. That's what Rebbe holds. Rabbanan Sabri, Rabbanan hold, but wait a second, it's like a Kedushin. Yalfinim a Kedushin, Ma Kedushin Medaita, Afochanam Medaita. Just like a regular Kedushin, it has to be with her consent. So also Maimer, by the Yavama situation, also be with her consent. So therefore, the conclusion is that Gerishin, which is Bal Karcha, and Maimer, according to Rebbe, is also Bal Karcha. That situation can be done, Bein He, Bein Avia, even according to Rabbanan, it's her and her father can do it. But Michael Mipalgi, what does Rebbe hold? What is the argument between Rebbe and the Rabbanim? That can you do Maimer against her consent? Rebbe Sava Mili Yavama Yavama Havileil. It's all part of Yavama. It's all part of the process of acquiring Yavama. Just like if you acquire a Yavama with Bia alone, it's against her without her consent. So if you're doing Maimer, it could also be without her consent. For Rabbanan Sabri, Rabbanan hold Kedushin Kedushin Have Leila Melech. It's more similar to a regular Kedushin. And therefore, just like a regular Kedushin cannot be done against her will, against the girl's will, so also a Maimer to Yavama cannot be done against the will. Now, says the Gemara, Hachenami Mistavra, the way we just answered this brisa is very simple. It makes perfect sense. Because the end of the brisa says, Ma she'en kain b'kedushim. Mishnah, that the brisa, or the Mishnah says that kedushin, it won't be bein hi bein avia. It will just be the father. Just that Ma she'en kain b'kedushin, as opposed to kedushin. Kedushin is different than Maimer. Maimer, it's bein hi bein avia. It's the girl and the father. But with Kedushin, the Brisa says clearly that it's only the father, not her. So the Gemara says, if the Mishnah says that clearly, explicitly, Elanema, wait a minute, Tavitiyuf to Rish Lakish, that's a clear Brisa against Rish Lakish, because this says that by Kedushin, only the father can accept the Kedushin for the 12-year-old girl, not herself. And Rish Lakish said, no, that according to Rabbanim, both the 12-year-old girl and the father can accept Kedushin, because just like by Gerushin it's both, so also by Kedushin. So this is a refutation against Rish Lakish. Rish Lakish says, Hamani Rebbe Yehuda, this Mishnah goes according to Rebbe Yehuda. The Amma Einstein Daim Zechitz Yachas. That, I think it's a Mishnah. Let's just double check. It's a Mishnah. That Mishnah goes according to Rebbe Yehuda. Well, and therefore, if that Mishnah goes according to Rebbe Yehuda, so therefore, only the father can do it. Really, Kedushin, it's only the father, not her. So, Rabbi Yehuda, if the Mishnah goes according to Rabbi Yehuda, that Mashenkim be Kedushin, Mashenkim be Gerushin be. It should say, as opposed to a Gerushin, it's the father, not her. Maimer is both. Why does the Mishnah pick Kedushin? The real source of Rabbi Yehuda's opinion is by Gerushin, where Rabbi Yehuda says it's only the father, not her. The Mishnah could have said those words, but I did Tani Maimer the Dami Kedushin, Tani Namashenkin Kedushin. Since it's dealing with Maimer, which is similar to a regular Kedushin, it's a Kedushin de Rabbanan, so it says Mashenkin Kedushin. It uses as opposed to Kedushin, but it also means, if it goes according to Rabbi Yehuda, that Rabbi Yehuda's opinion would hold true by Gerushin, which is the source of whereas Rabbi Yehuda's opinion is that only the father can accept the Gerushin for Naira Hamu Urasa, but not her herself. So then the question is, Rabbi Yehuda Maishno Maimer. Then why would Rabbi Yehuda give the exception by Maimer? If this Mishnah goes according to Rabbi Yehuda, this Mishnah says by Maimer, who the girl who's a 12-year-old girl who's a Yavama, she could accept Maimer even without just her herself or the father. Why do we give her the opportunity to accept the Maimer? So the Gemara says, since she's already bonded to the Yavam, so therefore it's nothing that the husband, it's nothing, it's more closer, it's already a halfway done deal. There's a bond, as you know, Yavama. She can't just marry anybody she wants. She either has to Yibum or Chalitza. So therefore, we let her be the one to accept the Maimer. Hash is also the Haching. Since you came up with this concept of by Yavama is different, it's already halfway done. When she falls to Yibam, she's already almost there, connected to a Yavam. So because of this bond that stands, Rabbi Yochanan, the beginning question against Rabbi Yochanan was that you said Rabbi Yochanan's original reason, what we thought his original reason was that the Gerushin, she's coming into the jurisdiction of her father, and Kedushin, she's removing herself from her father. And you said, oh, but Kedush Maimer, she's also removing herself from her father. And so why is it only both? So we can answer the same thing. The reason why it's both, Shani Maimer is since she is already bonded to the husband, to the Yavam, so since she's already bonded to Yavam, so both she, the Yavama, and her father, either or, can accept Maimer on her behalf. So the machlokes between Rabbi Shlokish and Rabbi Yochanan still stands. Now we learned in the Mishnah, a man could give Kedushin, accept Kedushin on behalf of his daughter when she is a 12-year-old. He can do it himself, or can send the messenger to do it. Only he can do it. Only the father can accept Kedushin. But she can't accept Kedushin. This is a refutation according to Rish Lakish, because according to Rish Lakish, Aliba de Rabbanan, both she can, even the girl herself, the 12-year-old, could accept Kedushin on her behalf. So why does the Mishnah say only he can do it, not she can do it? Amalach Rish Lakish says yes. Hanami Rabbi Yehudi. This Mishnah goes according to Rabbi Yehuda. And Rabbi Yehuda says, you're right, but by Gerushin, it's only him, only the father. So by Kedushin, it's also only the father. Well, me matzas Mike Misla Rabbi Yehuda. Can you say our Mishnah goes according to Rabbi Yehuda? So the Gemara is going to try to say our Mishnah cannot go to Rabbi Yehuda, and then the Gemara is going to say that yes, our Mishnah is Rabbi Shimon, the author of the Mishnah is Rabbi Shimon, but he holds of what Rabbi Yehuda says, that only the father and not who. So first the Gemara says, how can you say our Mishnah goes according to Rabbi Shimon? Well, Ketani Sefer, the Sefer of the Mishnah says, a man says, we're going to learn this Mishnah later on, give Kedushin to my wife, to a woman, you're betrothed to me with this date, or with this date. You're betrothed to me with this date. Well, since he said, Hiskachi li, you're Mekudeshes to me with this date, so then each date has to have a pruta. Because if none of them have a pruta, we can't combine them. Even though he gave her 10 dates, but since he said be mekudeshes with this date, be mekudeshes with this date, if no individual date has no pruta, value of a pruta, she's not mekudeshes. Now, because he said hiskachi, because he said the word hiskachi, it divided each kedushin, each statement into a separate statement. Ramina mantana hiskachi, who holds that by saying the word hiskachi, you're dividing it up into separate statements. Rabba said Rab Shimon. Rab Shimon, the Amma who said, if a person, you have to say the word shvua to each and every one. In other words, that case that Rab Shimon is talking about, if 5 people come over to a person and says, we deposited a pikadon, something for you in your house, and you were supposed to give it back, and he says, you didn't deposit anything, and he says, shvua to you, I swear to you, I swear to you, then he's chayav a different carbon for each shvua that he made. But he could have said it, shvua not to you, not to you, not to you. If he said it that way, he's only chayav only one carbon. So the fact, what breaks up it into separate statements, the fact that you were shvua. So our Mishnah goes according to Rab Shimon, who said hiskachi divides it up, the Kedushin case, into 2 distinct cases. If so, but maybe Rabbi Yehuda agrees with Rab Shimon that you need to say hiskachi or shvua. If you want to say that, our Mishnah goes with Rabbi Yehuda, and when it comes to dividing up statements, he holds like Rabbi Shimon that you need to say hiskachi in order to divide up the statements. But saying hiskachi bzu would not divide it up. But Tanya, that's not true. The rule is that if you combine it all into one shvua, you only chayv one shvua. But if you divided it up into each separate units, so if you're swearing to 5 separate people, you chayv on each and every one. Divrei Meir. So the Rabbi Yehuda explains what maybe Rabbi Meir meant. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, shvua, if you say shvua loylach, he without the vav. Not to you, I'm swearing not to you, swear not to you, not to you, not to you, that you don't, I never took anything from you. So even chayv kol achas v'achas, you chayv on each and every one. But if he would say shvua loylecha vil, then he chained them, and then it's only one. But here, if he didn't say vav, then you chayv for each and every one. If you word it this way, putting the word shvua at the end, then you chayv for each and every one. And Rab Shimon Omer, you only chayv if you say, I swear to each and every one. Then you divided it up, and therefore into separate statements, and only then are you chayiv for each and every one. So therefore, Rab Shimon can only be the author of hiskachi in the later on the Mishnah. So if Rab Shimon is the author, then it's not Rabbi Yehuda. So how could you say our Mishnayos in Masechta Kiddushin, 2nd parak, goes according to Rabbi Yehuda when actually the author is Rab Shimon? Alice says the Gemara, "Kula Rab Shimonin u'shlichus savalak Rabbi Yehuda." The whole Mishnah goes according to Rab Shimon. All the Mishnayos in the Masechta in the 2nd parak of Kiddushin goes according to Rab Shimon, but he holds like Rabbi Yehuda when it comes to sending a messenger and when it comes to a nara. Then he holds that nara, a 12-year-old girl, cannot accept Kiddushin on her behalf. It's only in the nara hamurasa, a nara cannot accept Kiddushin on her own behalf. It's the father and not her. So again, this is where we're at, and we're gonna just continue with this story. The story goes, the question the Gemara is asking, a question. The question is, there was a machlokes Does a 12-year-old girl, although we know her father accepts Kedushin on her behalf, but does she have a right to accept it on her behalf as well? What would the Rabbanan hold? So the Rabbanan hold by Gerushin, yes. So Rabbi Shlakish extends it also to Kedushin. Rabbi Yochanan says, no, by Kedushin, it's only the father, not her. So now the Gemara says, who do you paskin like? Says the Gemara a story. Rabbi Asi, like all the baby Midrash, Rabbi Asi could not come to the shir one day. Ashkechel Rabbi Zera, so he found Rabbi Zera, Amalei, my Amahi in the baby Midrash. What did they say today in the base Midrash? Amalei, so Rabbi Zera said, I didn't go to the base Midrash. Rabbi Oven, who the oil? Rabbi Oven was the one that went to the base Midrash. Ba'amra, and he told us over, Chavrusa Kulik Rabbi Yochanan. Everybody paskins like Rabbi Yochanan, that it's only the father and not her. And Shlachach started to make such high-pitched voice and sounds like a I have it written here. It's called a sandhill crane. And if you go on here it is, there's the sound. So that's what the Gemara is saying. It's an unbelievable sound. And Shlaka started to screaming, and nobody listened to you. He said, but we have a hekesh. Whatever applies by Gerushin, if it's she and her father, then it would apply also by Kedushin. So we paskin like Rabbi Yochanan that a girl, 12-year-old girl, cannot accept Kedushin without the father knowing about it. Amalei Rabbi Abin Bar Sum Amchahu, is Rabbi Abin reliable? He just, people say things over from a shir, but then they didn't pay attention. Amalei, they said in Rabbi Abin is you can rely on him, because he just walked out of the shir. It's like when you leave the water after fishing and you put it right onto the frying pan. The frying pan. So that's the point, is that he just heard it, and we heard it right from as he walked out of the shir, so it must be true. Amar Rav Nachman Yitzchak, Nachman Yitzchak said, I didn't know which Rav Oven said this. It wasn't Rav Oven, the son of Rav Chia, it wasn't Rav Oven, the son of Rav Kahana, it was a regular Rav Oven. So therefore, if you're going to find the contradiction of what Rav Oven said, we don't know which Rav Oven came out of the shir who said that the halacha is like Rabbi Yochanan. New Gemara. Baimene Ravim Rav Nachman. Rav asked a question for Rav Nachman. Another 2 minutes and then we'll stop. Naro mahu shutasu shliach lekabel gitim yad baila. Let's say you have a 12-year-old girl, and can she make a shliach? According to Rabbanan, everybody agrees by Gerushin, if she only had Erisin, she can accept gittin. She could accept the get, but can she make a shliach? Can she send a messenger to accept the get? Really, by Anara Hamurasa, really her father could accept the get, and she could accept the get. So that's the Rabbanan whole. So is kiyad aviyadami or kechatzar aviyadami? What is she, like the hand of the father, or like she's just like an extension of the father? Kiyad aviyadami, if she's like the hand of her father, ma aviyam shvavi shliach. The father could send the shliach to accept the get. Avhinami mishavi shliach. So also she could send the shliach to accept the get. Or Dilma, maybe, yes, she has the right to accept it into her own pocket, but she cannot send a messenger because she's like the courtyard of the she's like the backyard belonging to the father. She, until the get reaches her hand, she doesn't get gerusha. So is she really when you give it to her, according to this question, she is like the father getting the get. And she's like, it's like giving it to the backyard or throwing the get into the backyard of the father, and that could work. So the Gemara says, wait a second, the Rava had such a doubt. Rava said like this: a regular Isha, let's say a regular lady that's married, husband writes a get, kosav get, avda, and gave it to the hand of her particular slave. Yoshin, if the slave is sleeping, umishamartoi, and she's watching this slave, harez a get, that's in the get. Because when you give it to a human, if the human is sleeping or is under anesthesia and the woman is watching him, that means you're giving it to her like giving it to her house or whatever. The get is good. Neir, but if the slave is awake, ain't a get. And if why not? Neir amai any get. Why isn't it a good get? The because the slave is being watched by his own volition. So therefore, that's not a good chotzer. Chotzer means that she's watching the backyard, not that the backyard is watching itself. So the question is, if she is considered a chotzer of the father, the Naira case, if she's considered the chotzer of the father, but she's watching herself, she cannot be a chotzer. An awake human being cannot be considered to be a chotzer. She's a chotzer of the father, but she's a chotzer that's not being watched by the father. So how could she be a chotzer of the father? This is the question. Everybody knows that she is like the hand of a father. Is she as strong as the father that she can make a shliach to accept the get, or not? So they answered the question. Rav Nachman answered, Ein shliach. Ein, that means Ein oisa shliach. She can't make a shliach. One last question, and then we'll stop. She can't make a shliach. So a naira, a 12-year-old girl that's mureses, she's different than her father. Her father can make a shliach to accept the get from the husband, and of course he could accept it himself. The 12-year-old girl cannot make a shliach she's like the father, but not as powerful as the father. The get will only work if it reaches her hand, but not that she can make a shliach. So the Gemara asks a question, and this is the final question. A small girl, a 7-year-old girl says to a guy, "You be a shliach to accept my get." There's not a good get because a 7-year-old girl cannot make a shliach. Honara, but if she was 12-year-old, harez a get would be a good get. So you see, a nara could make a shliach to accept the get. And for the Gemara, we're talking about she'ein lo av, that she has no father. So yes, then she can make the shliach because there's no father getting in the way. So she is the only one that could accept the get. So therefore, yeah, she could make a shliach to accept the get. Says the Gemara, how could you say that this Bryce is talking about when she has no father? Since the end of the Bryce says, if the father said, say get lebiti, if the father makes a shliach, right? Then once the father takes it back and says, "Oh, I don't want you to be my shliach," it doesn't work if he already accepted the get. So since the end of the second part of the brisa is talking about where there is a father, since it must be that the beginning of the brisa is also when there is a father. So the Gemara says this is no. There's a few words missing from this brisa. If the Ketana says if a 7-year-old girl says, "Accept my get, ain't a get, achigi get the other," that wouldn't work until the get reaches her hand. Hanara, but if she's 12 years old, yes, she could make hareza get. She could make a shliach. The mad devar maroon. This is the words you have to add into the brisa. When was this said? When could a 12-year-old make a shliach? Kishein la'av. If she has no father, that means she's the boss. Ava yesh la'av. But if she's 12-year-old girl has a father, va'amar avia, then only the father can make a shliach. And va'amar avia, and the father said to somebody, "Say v'kabel biti gita, you accept the get for my daughter." And then he accepted the get. And the father wants to take it back and says, "Oh, I don't want you to be my shliach." Layachsa, it doesn't work because the get was valid as soon as it reached the shliach's hand. So the Gemara leaves it as, yes, we know that the daughter, the 12-year-old, could accept the get if she accepts it herself, but she cannot send a shliach, unlike the father who can accept it on his behalf and could also send a shliach. This is where we'll stop.